A Hat in Time is a 3D platformer released all the way back in 2017, and in my opinion, it's one of the best 3D platformers ever made and one of my personal favorite games of all time. In this game, you play as Hat Kid, an adorable little girl traversing through a wondrous world. You join her as she goes on a wacky adventure to collect timepieces so that she can fuel her spaceship and return home, all while seeing incredible vistas, meeting wacky characters, and overall just having a blast in this absolutely gorgeous art style. And in this video, let's take a look back on this game and what makes it so special. Whether you love this game as much as I do, or you've just been introduced to this game for the first time, join me as I show you why A Hat in Time is almost a perfect platformer. First off, before we get into me glazing this game's charm, let's just get this out of the way first. The core gameplay is absolutely fantastic. It has all the same mechanics that other great 3D platformers have, but they put their own spin on things. Jumping and diving around is floaty in the most perfect way. Each jump has weight to it, but you can still glide and soar through the air. It's addicting and makes every section of this game a joy to play. Traversing the wacky landscapes could not feel any better. But of course, the main thing that differentiates this game from others is the hat mechanic. I mean, it's literally in the name. Throughout the game, you gather yarn that can be used to create new hats that give you special abilities. I'll go over each one by one. The first hat you get is the sprint cap, which, you guessed it, lets you sprint. This is an extremely useful hat and one you'll probably have on the most. The brewing hat allows us to throw explosive potions that can destroy enemies and certain objects. I also just love Hat Kid's expression as she uses his hat, they're so adorable. The ice hat allows us to turn into ice and bounce around on these little platforms. The dollar mask can reveal certain objects or make other objects disappear. And finally, the time stop hat is a hat that stops time. Go figure. This one is a late game hat and one you have to go out of your way and grind for, but it's necessary for one of the acts. Sure, the hat mechanic could be a bit more in depth, but I personally think it serves its purpose well of just adding that little extra depth to the platforming. Plus it adds replayability to the levels as returning to older chapters with newer hats allows you to access things previously inaccessible. Finally, there is combat in this game, but that's in quotes because it's extremely simple. You smack people with an umbrella and have a homing attack while in the air. Very simple stuff that serves its purpose well. Obviously this game is not combat centric, so the combat is not going to be some crazy DMC level depths, but the boss fights in this game are absolutely incredible, but I'll get to those eventually. Now that we've established that the core mechanics of this game are wonderful, let's move on to the story. Now the story is a simple one, and that's perfectly fine, especially for a game like this. This game follows Hat Kid, a space traveler who uses these timepieces to fuel her spaceship to return home. But after an incident with the local mafia who is just hanging out in space and not dying a horrible death, her timepieces get scattered across a foreign planet, leaving her mildly annoyed. From here, she lands in Mafia Town, where she meets the very creatively named Mustache Girl, who has been fighting the mafia on this island. Hat Kid and Mustache Girl team up to find out the timepieces and bring down the mafia. After defeating the mafia boss, Mustache Girl finds out that the timepieces can reverse time. Mustache Girl is ecstatic and wants to use them to fight evil, but Hat Kid's just like, nah, I'm good. So the two have a falling out and Mustache Girl ends up stealing our money, which is just not cool, and bam, now we're enemies. And that's the intro to the game in a nutshell. Like I said, a simple story. Now to be honest, although I wasn't expecting some deep Kojima level insight on philosophical subjects, the overarching story in this game is a little weak. Mustache Girl as a character isn't all that fleshed out, and that's because she doesn't show up again until the end of the game. And while Hat Kid is adorable and has some really funny dialogue, if you can call it that, she also isn't exactly some deep character. Instead, what makes this game shine is the individual stories throughout each chapter and even acts. You see, this game is divided into 4 different chapters, all with a unique map to explore and wacky characters to meet. Each one is brimming with charming moments to experience that make this game such a joy to play. Let's cover each one individually, starting with the first chapter, Mafia Town. Mafia Town is a great introduction to the game and sets the whimsical tone perfectly. The map itself is fantastic. It's chock full of fun movement options and lets the game's great mechanics shine perfectly. There is just so much room for exploration in this level, especially after you get more hats that can access different things than before. As for charm, this chapter is full of it. The Mafia are all great and have some hilarious dialogue. This chapter has a total of 7 acts. Acts 1, 2, and 4 cover the main story of this game, and the rest are more or less aimless side quests. Every act in this game requires us to find a timepiece to end the act, and this game has some creative means on how you get those timepieces. Acts 1 and 2 are great tutorial acts, introducing us to both the main gameplay mechanics and our first boss fight. Act 3 introduces us to a change of scenery, which means a change in attire that's looking absolutely spiffy and... But don't worry, in this state we can strike the fear of God in the local mafia who think we're an alien. Specifically, we need to scare this one who gives us the timepiece we need. I especially loved Act 4 as a lot gets introduced. We get to meet the badge seller who, ignoring his twitchy presence, sells us badges that give us helpful upgrades to our abilities. We also meet a bartender mafia who is actually kind of a chill dude. It's kind of cool to see them flesh out the mafia so that they're not all just mustache twirling villains, despite looking like, well, mustache twirling villains. But finally, we get the big boy himself, the mafia boss fight. This is the second boss fight in the game, and boy is it a banger. It locks you into 2D movement where you can only move from side to side. The boss has a multitude of moves ranging from really easy to kind of difficult to dodge. The sheer volume of projectiles can be overwhelming, but it isn't too bad. Later on the bosses get pretty crazy, but we'll get to those eventually. From here, Mafia Town opens up to the aforementioned side quests, such as in Act 7 where we have to find tickets to open up a golden vault, and then in Act 6, everyone on the island almost gets burned alive. Turns out Mustache Girl opened the faucets to control the town volcano, which naturally every good town should have, but now it's up to you to turn off all the faucets and restore peace to the town. This level offers a change of pace. We've gotten used to how Mafia Town looks from previous levels, and now we have to traverse it while the floor is lava. It's a fun challenge and tests how well you remember the level and how it works. But anyway, we turn off all the faucets and in return the Mafia reward us with a timepiece. Why did we help the Mafia after defeating their leader, causing mayhem to the internal power structure of their organization? I don't really know. But anyway, we get our timepiece and that's all that matters. And finally, for the final act of this chapter, we have to basically beat the entire game. Remember how I said that the time stop hat was a late game hat? Well, it's an essential item for this act. And so before we can even beat the first chapter, we have to go through the entire game and then do even more grinding in order to finally get the time stop hat. But once we do, we can actually enter this act with the required items. When we arrive, we see a mafia guy on top of a rocket. He asked us to race him for a timepiece. Okay, simple enough. I have a hat that literally stops time. This should be a breeze and he's already won. This act is kind of hard. Even with the time stop hat, it requires expert knowledge of the movement mechanics of this game to get enough momentum to beat the mafia guy. Later I learned that the fast hatter badge trivializes this act entirely, but unfortunately for me, I didn't have it. But eventually, in a miraculous run, I managed to beat the Mafia guy and get our final timepiece of the chapter. And that wraps up Mafia Town, a really solid opening chapter and one I personally enjoyed a lot. You can tell it was the first developer's design, but it feels like they had a lot of fun with it. The levels were all creative and interesting, and the Mafia boss was a great boss fight. Overall, it was an excellent start to our journey, but up next we got Chapter 2, Battle of the Birds. We enter Dead Bird Studio, a movie studio where two birds are having a bit of an argument. On the left we have the conductor, known for his savvy western films. On the right we have DJ Grooves, known for his flashy movies. The annual Bird Movie Awards are right around the corner, and both these birds have got a special new prop for their movies and... wait a second. Yep, looks like our timepieces have found their way into the hands of both directors, and we gotta get them back. Luckily for us, there's a conveniently loose vent and oh, trespassing? Heh, like that's gonna stop me. Looks like we'll be doing a bit of sneaking around. This chapter introduces us to some stealth elements that complements the platforming really well. It's simple but effective at adding to the already great platforming, which can be said for a lot of this game. But anyway, after sneaking to the studio and doing a bit of funny business, we make it to a statue of the trophy where we get recruited by both DJ Grooves and the conductor to help with their movies. Apparently, birds just suck at acting, and so the two of them need someone new and you're just a gal. But anyway, long story short, the conductor gives us our first timepiece of the chapter. Already this chapter is showing that it is much more focused and has an overarching narrative that ties it all together. It's an interesting premise carried by its excellent characters. The conductor is this egomaniac that is kind of an asshole, but a lovable asshole. And DJ Grooves, who is this charismatic penguin, but as we later find out, he kinda sucks at making movies. From here we get to choose between which bird to help. We inevitably have to do all of them, so let's just check out the conductor's mission first, Murder on the Owl Express. We arrive on the conductor's train, a main part of all of the conductor's acts, and then are asked some very personal questions by these peculiar crows. Another fun fact, I'm sure some of you will type something vulgar, and in return, you get an achievement just called Why. Don't ask me why I have this achievement. We can type anything we want, so for simplicity's sake, I'll just answer everything with Bob. But anyway, after giving all our information to the Crow NSA and signing a ridiculously long terms and conditions page, we make it to the front of the train where we find a detective outfit that is looking absolutely drippy. But suddenly, a mysterious call interrupts us.
Is this the kid with the hat? I hope you like my present. Go to the back of the train. Your uncle's sister has come to visit you. You better show your fam some love, or I'll be talking to a corpse next time.
Okay, that's totally not ominous and kinda creepy. I wonder what our uncle's sister Bob is doing. God, the voice acting is incredible. But yep, that's right, there's been a murder, and your uncle's sister is the prime suspect. But hold on, turns out the Crows are investigating this case and forcing us to stay put. But that ain't our mojo, so it's up to us to sneak around and find out who the true murderer is. This is where those stealth elements really shine. They even throw in a little Metal Gear Solid reference for us nerds. Sneaking around the train is an absolute blast. Crows are watching everywhere, so you gotta be careful. Your objective is to find clues that point to certain suspects before the time runs out, and to do that, you're going to have to search every nook and cranny on this train. One thing this game nails beyond all else is atmosphere, and this level shows it. Everything from the music to the environment really gives an eerie feeling of solving a murder mystery. But this game is always having fun and still throws in a few jokes into the mix. All those questions you answered earlier come in later for some funny gags. Eventually, we get the final clue and the clock strikes noon, leaving us to decide who to accuse of the murder. I decided it would be extremely funny if I snitched on myself. I mean, come on, look at the schmuck, all smug like a murderer would be. The conductor then starts writing the most goriest fanfiction you've ever heard before it's revealed that the victim wasn't actually dead and was all a ruse. Turns out this was just a setup for the conductor's new movie. We then get a timepiece and that completes Murder on the Express, which is honestly my favorite act in the entire game. It's so charming yet filled with player agency, allowing you to decide who to accuse. It's got wacky characters, replay value, and most importantly, just really fun to play. Well, already DJ Grooves has a lot to live up to, so let's see what he's doing. DJ Grooves wants us to turn into a diva, and to do that we need fans. So we go around begging people to be our fan. Kinda like how a YouTuber begged you to subscribe, hint hint, wink wink, nudge nudge. Overall this act is alright, but nothing special. For the next DJ Grooves act, definitely ups the ante. Now that we've successfully become a diva, it's time for the big parade to begin. This means we gotta lead it in our absolutely dripped out outfit. It's not too bad, all you gotta do is not touch the band, not touch the floor, avoid fireworks that will burn you alive, and oh yeah, look out for fucking homing missiles. Real chill and fun stuff. Now you may be asking, what exactly is the plot of this movie? And to be honest, I have no idea. But I'm sure it's absolute cinema, okay? I wonder what the conductor will have us do.
Meanwhile,
What the fuck is happening? Oh my god! So in this act, our good friend and conductor turns from Martin Scorsese into Michael Pecking Bay. We make a little oopsie daisy and accidentally pull on the switch for the self-destruct sequence for the train, and now it's a mad dash to the front to turn it off. If you thought the big parade was hectic, Train Rush makes that look like a walk in the Peking Park. There are explosions galore, saws tearing up the place. It's a complete mess and I love it. Another banger act from the conductor accompanied with a banger soundtrack. But with all the acts done, it's time we tally the points and see who won the award. Each act has given us a certain amount of points for their respective bird based on how well you did in them. And for me, it was DJ Grooves that came out on top. Attending the award ceremony, it's surprisingly chill with nothing crazy going on, and thus we get our final timepiece for the chapter. So I guess that was Battle of the Birds. Time to move on to... Oh?
The annual Bird Movie Award was rigged. It was an inside job. The winner knows about the power of the timepieces. He's been keeping one, and he's gonna break it. The truth lies buried underneath Deadbird Studio. What goes on in Deadbird Studio when no one is around? Blow the cover on this thing, lassie.
Looks like we've got some unfinished business. We return to Dead Bird Studio, only this time in the dead of night, and not too long after, we unlock the true 6th act. After making our way to the studio, we meet DJ Grooves, and thus begins the final battle for this act. Overall, this fight is pretty easy if you're not completely stupid like me. He has a lot of attacks, but a majority of them leave him vulnerable for a counter. His attacks are also easy to dodge, but the wide variety of attacks adds a lot of flavor to this boss. All of his attacks are props from the movies we starred in, including the murder knife, a giant disco ball, the parade, only this time equipped with even more knives. But overall, we kick his ass so bad he ends up just opting to talk to us instead. To sum up his yapping, it turns out he thinks the conductor has been cheating to win and wants to correct it with the timepiece.
I just need one timepiece to fix years of cheating and fraud. Can't you spare me just one timepiece, darling?
Maybe?
Oh, thank you, darling. You won't regret it. We'll fix years of fraud and cheating and go back to the annual Burn Movie Awards being honest and upstanding. Unfortunately, I can't have you leave this room, darling.
What?
It was nice knowing you, darling. Goodbye.
Now things take a turn for the worse, as we now have a bomb strapped to us and must finish the fight in time before it explodes. But the conductor turns out to be a real homie and hooks us up with a diffuser. And so we defeat DJ Grooves and get the true final timepiece of the chapter. Overall, this chapter is excellent and my personal favorite of the bunch. Each level was unique and diverse in level design. The story was also just really entertaining. Both the conductor and DJ Grooves are such fun characters. And finally, I love the point system in this chapter. Sure, it doesn't change much, the only difference is that if the conductor wins, you fight him instead, but it's something that makes each playthrough just a little bit different. Next up, we have Subcon Forest. We arrive in this mysterious and spooky forest and see a mysterious looking individual, so we decide to do the natural thing and stalk him. Moments later, we get caught in this Tom and Jerry ass trap, and then we meet the one and only This is the Snatcher, and he is the ruler of this forest, and instead of killing us, he instead decides to give us a contract. In exchange for our soul, we just gotta do some dirty work for him. And fun fact, if you decline his offer enough, you just straight up die. We don't have much of a choice, so we sign a contract and get our soul ripped away from us. Right off the bat, the Snatcher is just such a cool character. He has an overpowering presence that makes him seem menacing, and the voice actor does an amazing job, and it makes every encounter with him an absolute joy. But anyway, after taking a seat and contemplating how we may have just sold our soul to the devil, we continue on to complete the first contract. There are a few spirits that are creating barriers around the forest and we need to deal with them. Let's see what they've got to say for themselves.
We want to die! Yay!
Well, to assist them with their desire to game end themselves, all we gotta do is throw a few paintings into their fire and bam, they're gone. Well, after giving them their wish, the Snatcher comes back and being the little annoyance he is, gives us yet another contract. Only this time we get a choice. Let's go with this one. All we gotta do is go to some manor and find what's in the attic. Doesn't sound too bad. But anyway, thus concludes the first act, and we get our first timepiece of this chapter. Overall, a solid introduction that introduces us to both the Snatcher and to the forest as a whole. But we have a contract to fulfill, and next up is to clean the Subcon well. This act introduces us to two new mechanics. One is the bells that can be rung to reveal hidden platforms. Later on, the Dweller Mask will be able to do this as well, but for now we'll just use the bells. Making our way inside the well, we get the hook shot. No, not that hook shot. That one, which is basically just a grapple hook, allowing us to swing our way to the top of the well. And after making it there, all we gotta do is charge one of these fruits and bam, well clean. We then get blasted out of the well and get our second timepiece of the chapter. Overall, a chill act with nothing too crazy going on, just more of that super fun platforming combined with the awesome hookshot. Our next act is the contract we selected before and that's some creepy artwork. Most of the other ones have been good clean fun, but this one is frankly kind of terrifying. Well, I'm sure it's nothing. As the contract says, we've got to make our way to the manor. But before that, we have another run-in with the Snatcher where he gives us yet another contract. This happens multiple times, which unlocks the rest of the acts in this chapter. But anyway, we make our way to the manor and oh, the front entrance is locked. Let's head around the back and... Well, that's very welcoming. Let's just get in there and see what's going on around here. As we enter, everything becomes quiet, the music eerie and unsettling. We approach the door, but before we can enter, one of Snatcher's minions tells us our contract states that we can't use hats in the manor. Great, so that leaves barely any options to defend ourselves. Well, I guess we just advance further into the manor and, okay, you know what? What is going on here? I thought this was supposed to be a funny game with a funny hat kid doing funny things, and now it's turned into this weird, creepy. What the fuck is that? Oh no! What the fuck? Yep, your eyes are not deceiving you. This game just randomly decided to become a horror game. In this act, you must gather keys to lock doors to help you progress. But be careful not to make too much noise, or else Vanessa will hear you. And yes, every time she's on screen, this terrifying sound plays, even in my nightmares. And there is some deep lore you can find by reading the journal entries, but god damn it, I just want to get out of here. But as a horror level, this works really well. Vanessa is genuinely terrifying, and the environment itself is scary as well. I mean, look at this painting that changes as you keep changing rooms. If that doesn't keep you up at night, then I don't know what will. But the game still has some fun with Vanessa just up and taking a shower in the middle of hunting you down, leaving you to crawl under her vision and— oh god! But eventually, after a lot of screaming, we finally make it to the attic and oh, what do you know, there's a timepiece there. And fun fact, you can actually skip this entire level if you really wanted to, which is a generous gift for the developers for those who are, how do I put this, complete pussies. Moving on, our next contract involves even more plumbing duties. This time we gotta defeat the Toilet of Doom. Never in a million years would I have thought that a boss called the Toilet of Doom would be a banger boss fight, but God is the Toilet of Doom a banger boss fight. He has a plethora of attacks, all of which have their own ways of leaving him vulnerable. This boss creatively incorporates the hookshot, and it's so fun to swinging into him, dealing massive damage. Aside from the hookshot, the only time we can hit him regularly with our umbrella is when he turns blue. This is an important note to make, as it will play a role in another boss fight. But overall, the varied attacks of this boss make it so engaging to fight. There are so many things to be looking out for, but opportunities to attack are not scarce. You just have to learn when you can engage and when you have to back off. Eventually, we defeat the Toilet of Doom and get our next timepiece of the chapter. The next contract is to just be a delivery guy. That's pretty much it. We get to use a scooter and shoot melee at minions. No, it is genuinely that simple. No gimmicks or horrors beyond our comprehension. And honestly, I kinda wish there were something more. The scooter is fun to use and it's nice to use it for something as there aren't many uses outside of this act, but finding all the minions was tedious and more like a chore than a fun activity. But whatever, after completing the mission we get our timepiece. And well, that's our final contract done. Now we can just take this final timepiece and—
Wait up, kid.
looks like things won't be so easy. Turns out that once contractors lose their value to the Snatcher, he ends up disposing of them. So he takes our hat and thus the Snatcher boss fight begins. This is an incredible boss fight and one deserving of the Snatcher. He shoots giant lasers which can get pretty tricky to dodge. He can summon his horde of minions which we can easily jump over, but he has more tricks up his sleeve, like these potions he throws at you, or when he tries to trick you by summoning a copy of him, requiring you to figure out which one is the real Snatcher. All while never turning blue and giving us an opening to attack. All seems lost, but wait, one of his potions didn't go off. We throw it onto the Snatcher and—
Did you just color me blue with my own attack? This can't count, right?
oh yes, it very much does. Now is our chance to attack. He becomes vulnerable now, but he's desperate and he ups the ante with his attacks. Overall, such a great boss fight with one of the best tracks in the entire game. But finally, after dodging many projectiles, we deliver the final blow to the Snatcher. Well, seems like we did it. Don't think there'll be any more contracts.
Have a seat.
Nope, okay. The Snatcher gives us one last contract, which is just to get out, nothing more. But instead, as if Hat Kid wasn't adorable enough, she rewrites the contract to include staying and having fun, being nice, and finally, for the Snatcher to be her BFF. Snatcher continues to yap about how that's not how contracts work, but we just give him the silent treatment. Eventually, he gives us our soul back as well as the final timepiece. You got your soul back! You feel relieved, energized, and the usual amount of empty. No way, Hat Kid's just like me for real. But all in all, that was Subcon Forest, another great chapter both gameplay wise and story wise. Sure, there were some not so exciting acts, but then there were some that introduced plenty of great gameplay mechanics. The atmosphere around the forest was also top notch, and of course there were the boss fights. This game does boss fights really well, and this chapter had two of the best ones. Story-wise, Snatcher was such a charming villain that made this chapter so engaging. He was funny and entertaining as hell to listen to. But that wraps up Subcon Forest. Up next we have our final chapter, Alpine Skyline. Now this one is a little different as this one is a free roam section where you can go wherever you please. But it is divided into 4 different areas that house timepieces, so I'll go over each one starting with my least favorite and ending with my favorite. First up we got the Twilight Bell. While aesthetically it might be one of the more interesting locations in the entire game, I found traversing it confusing and kind of annoying. This area uses the Dweller mask often and sometimes makes for some creative puzzles. But other than that, I just don't like the layout for this one all too much, so that's why it's in last. Next up is Birdhouse. This one is just really short. I'm pretty sure I spent more time getting here than actually completing the area. The area itself, however, is fine. There are a lot of these egg enemies which can be annoying, but the brewing hat makes quick work of them. In second place, we have the Lava Cake. The creativity on this one is great. I mean, come on, a cake made out of lava is insane and makes for an aesthetically pleasing level. Level design is also great, making use of timed platforms to its advantage. And finally, my favorite is the Windmill. While aesthetically is not the most creative, it makes up for it in level design. With so many moving parts, platforming here is a fun balance of being challenging without being too tedious. Also, I personally think this area has the best music. It kind of reminds me of the Song of Storms from Zelda, which I think is a nice touch. Overall, when it comes to level design, Alpine Skyline is great. But you'll notice that I haven't really talked about the story for this chapter. And well, that's because there isn't one. Despite having the same great platforming as the previous chapters, Alpine Skyline feels like it's missing a core element that made the previous chapters so great. And that of course is the wacky shenanigans that was happening in the story. We don't get any cool new characters to meet in this chapter. All we get are these small guys that give us helpful tips, and these goat people which you'd best stay out of their way. The only semblance of a story is that after you collect all the timepieces, a plague infects the goat people and then you have to save them by destroying the flowers and inflict the disease. After we barely get to the final planet with a fraction of our life and totally don't die many times along the way, the goat people gift us with the final timepiece of the chapter. So in short, Alpine Skyline is a fun playthrough, but with a lack of narrative or wacky characters, it feels like a step down from previous chapters. But after you collect your 25th timepiece, something interesting happens. In the turn of events, you get to play as Mustache Girl as she breaks into Hat Kid's ship. She then opens the vault of timepieces and goes to town. I wondered what she used those timepieces for. Oh, that doesn't look good. But before we enter the finale, you'll notice I have much more than 25 timepieces, and that's because I've been doing a bit of backtracking through the chapters, mainly for 2 reasons. One is for yarn so that we can get the time stop hat, but the other is for time rift. These are like secret levels you can find throughout the main chapters. Finding them can be a bit challenging, but exploring through the chapters is actually a whole lot of fun, especially the open-ended ones like Subcon Forest and Mafia Town. It can feel like entirely new levels with how much stuff is jam-packed in these maps, especially Subcon Forest. I was surprised how big that map got when you go off the beaten path. Once you find a time rift, you're sent into this other dimension with quite possibly some of the chillest music I have ever heard. These levels are a bit more challenging than the standard levels, but all of them are good fun. It's honestly a relaxing experience going to these time rifts and just enjoying the great platforming you're given. But aside from just blue time rifts, purple time rifts work a little differently. They are much longer and have multiple levels to them. Each one requires you to get a certain amount of rift pawns to progress to the next level. But aside from just rift pawns, you can also find these pieces of paper which at the end actually give lore on the chapters they are in, which is so cool. I love it when games hide little bits and pieces of lore in certain places that you have to go out of your way and find. But of course, that's not why we're here, and at the end of each time rift, you get rewarded with a timepiece. And after we acquire the last few timepieces left, all we have to do now is pay Mustache Girl a visit and put an end to this whole adventure. We find the planet a complete inferno with a giant castle where Mustache Girl is residing. Here we see every character we've met along the way, all waiting to be judged by Mustache Girl. And now all we gotta do is just wait our turn and let's just skip to the front. Making our way to the Bowser's Castle looking level, we finally confront Mustache Girl. She deems us a good person and lets us leave, but that's not why we came here. We want the timepieces. After getting bitch slapped by Mustache Girl, she then gets insulted that our face touched her hand, and thus she deems us a bad person and the fight is on. In this fight, she becomes a full-on Dragon Ball character, using instant transmission and becoming a human heat-seeking missile. However, the first phase is easily beaten with a sprint cap. After the first phase, everyone throughout the game comes to tell Mustache Girl that she can get lost. It's a heartwarming moment seeing all the characters you've met throughout the game come to your aid and help you against Mustache Girl. From here, the second phase starts in this absolutely sick looking boss arena. Mustache Girl gets even more Dragon Ball, busting out a Kamehameha and devastating attacks using timepieces. Eventually you get to a point where she teleports every time you get near her, making you unable to damage her. But don't worry, the Conductor and the Mafia have got our back, as they form a giant ball that you can then hit into Mustache Girl, dealing massive damage. Later on she gets an invincible shield, and this time it's the Snatcher and one of the Go people from Alpine Skyline that assists you, throwing explosive fruit in to take out her shield. This enrages Mustache Girl, who starts killing the people watching. It's then revealed that when someone dies, they drop heart pawns, and in a moment of selflessness, all the people you've seen throughout the game sacrifice themselves to give heart pawns to Hat Kid so that she can win and revert everything back to the way it was. From here, the fight becomes trivial as you get an infinite pool of health to work with. After dealing the final blow to Mustache Girl, we are left with the big chalupa of timepieces. We then get super pumped at the sight of all these timepieces and then immediately smash them. This reverts everything back to normal. We then see Mustache Girl unconscious in Mafia Town and are given the option to give her one of our timepieces. Nothing really comes of either option, so I chose not to do it because she can go peck off. But before we can leave, our newfound friends beg us to stay, to which we just adorably brush them off the ship, sending them to their impending doom. And from here it's smooth sailing all the way back home. Like I said before, if Mustache Girl was just a bit more fleshed out, then this ending would be perfect. But as it stands, I think Mustache Girl was a bit of an underwhelming fight. But still, this is a fun and heartwarming ending to an incredible game. And that's a Hat in Time. Overall, just a fantastic game with so much character and charm to it. I loved every second of playing this game. From the awesome platforming to the quirky characters to the funny moments, it was all so wonderful. There is so much to talk about in this game, and to be honest, I feel like I just scratched the surface when it comes to all the fun little details that make this game so joyous. Is it perfect? No, but in my opinion, it doesn't need to be. At the end of the day, this game just makes me happy. Life can be stressful, but I assure you that this game will put a smile on your face no matter your circumstance. And at the very least, I hope this video did as well. If you did enjoy this video, then please subscribe, like, comment, and hit the bell to be notified of every upload, and I will catch you another time.